So next up, we have Parecki. He is the CTO at Esri R&D Center.
Great, yeah, hi. My name is Parecki. I'm CTO of the Esri R&D Center in Portland. I want to talk about a different kind of augmentation, not just visual. So, and in the context of quantified self devices. I've been wearing a lot of these trackers for a long time. I have, actually last summer I was wearing about 8 of them at any given point, which was a little bit much, a little bit overkill. But I was trying to experiment with them and figure out what about each one was good and bad. And I've been tracking a lot of data about myself. This is GPS location of everywhere I've been since 2008. So it's about 12 million data points collected in the last 6 years. I check into places on Foursquare, and I've been doing that consistently since about 5 years ago, and I have 5,000 check-ins there. I've been tracking my sleep for just over 3 years, so about 800 nights of sleep, and that's with the Jawbone. I've been doing that. And tracking my weight for the past 3 years as well, 700 days of data, and that's with the WeThink scale at home. And then in the past year, I've started tracking bike rides and also food. And food is something I've been fascinated with tracking, and I've been trying for a long time to figure out a good solution to that, and ended up resorting to literally the Notes app on my iPhone and just writing it down, because I have not found an app that does it any better than that. The one exception is the new Jawbone app that launched for tracking coffee specifically, which is pretty good. It's pretty quick to use, and that's the one on the right. And I just discovered today that in the past 10 months, I've had over 500 cups of coffee. So that's kind of cool. So I track a lot of things about myself, and I wear a lot of devices and use a lot of different apps. This is the set of apps I'm using right now. The problem is, the way this works right now is you buy one of these devices, the Jawbone, the WeThink scale, the Fitbit, the Nike Plus. You download the app for it. You go into the App Store, you download the app. You create a new account in that network, and it's usually got some crazy password requirement that nothing else has, so you might have to use a different password than you always used before. Then it goes and says, oh, I want to go find all your friends. And you have to go and friend everybody on this new social network that you have just joined. And what we end up with is these silos of data. So I've got now all these different apps and all these different networks where I have different groups of friends on each. Sometimes the data you can get out via the API. Most of them have pretty good APIs, but they're all different formats. Each app has its own social network. And the other crazy thing is that each app, if it wants to get additional data, it has to do that on its own. Like, Jawbone app is tracking my sleep. If it wants to know what city I'm in, then it has to go and track my location as well. So now I've had to, enable that feature. Even though the Moves app is tracking my location all the time, and it already knows where I am all the time. Why should the Jawbone app have to do that as well? And where does this data go? Well, it goes into a separate API run by each company. So there's the Jawbone API, there's the Moves API, there's the Strava API. And these are all cloud services that each company has to maintain and operate. Which means I then have to trust that they're handling my data properly and making sure they're storing it properly, and that there's no data breaches in each of these companies that I've been spewing my data out at. Oftentimes they will actually go and mine this data or sell the data, and of course I agree to that when I click the little I agree, sign up, just let me use the damn app. And of course, if the company shuts down, then where does the data go? It's just gone. If you want to see a really depressing list of places this has happened, go to this indiewebcamp.com/site deaths, and there's a very thorough list of lots of companies that have shut down and just vanished URLs all over the place. And now we're seeing the same thing happen with the connected home. So it's not just quantified self devices, it's also now home automation. And these are the ones that I have right now, smart things for motion sensing and door locks, camera system, air quality. So we're in this crazy situation right now where there's all these different APIs, and they each have their own terms of service and their own privacy policies and their own ways to get data in and out. And I have to sign up for each, and they each have to do everything on their own, and they don't really talk to each other. Like, the pretty crazy thing is if I'm using the smart things and I want to turn on my light, or the motion sensor wants to turn on my light, or my iPhone, I launch the app, push the button, it goes and sends a message to some data center across the other side of the country, which sends a message back to my house, and then the light turns on. It's like calling the electric company and saying, hey, can you turn on my lights when I flip the switch? At least the Philips Hue has done it a little bit better, where the bridge in the house is controlled by my Wi-Fi network. So if I launch the app and push a button, I'm talking directly to the hub, which turns on the lights. So there's no cloud API needed for that. The cloud API, of course, is needed if I'm out of my house and don't have access to my network. So that works out okay. So the problem is that there's all these different networks and APIs and formats, and what we need is something that ties them together, something that is under my own control, that I can use to manage all of this. This is the idea of the personal server. This is something that I would buy. I might buy it from Apple. I might buy it from Google. I might buy it from some small, tiny company, from a friend that started the business. But the point is that I can choose where to buy it from, and then all of these devices that I'm wearing or my home can send data to and from it instead. So that means that if I want my Moves app to turn on the light when I get home, Moves doesn't need to know about Philips. It'll just say, hey, server at home, turn on the lights. And that knows how to talk to whatever brand of light bulb that I bought. So it collects data from all these wearables. It knows how to monitor and control devices in my home. It can back up the data, and it knows how to do that. I can selectively grant access to other apps as well. So maybe I have a sleep analysis app where somebody made this cool thing where it's like, hey, we'll tell you how well you're sleeping based on and show you how that correlates to the air quality and levels of CO2 in your home. Well, why should they have to know about all the 5 different CO2 monitor devices on the market? They should just be able to tap into the personal server and get the data from there. So this is an OAuth-like screen where this app wants to get access to some parts of my personal data that's living on my own server. So this personal server is the common language that ties all of these devices, wearables and home automation devices together. This puts me in the middle, and my data in the middle, where I know where data is coming in and out. It separates the idea of building the hardware devices from building the applications, and separate from social networks and separate from aggregation services. So if you are Jawbone and coming into the market with a new device, separating the roles of building the physical device, that's a pretty big challenge to just do this and make this work well. Not to mention building a nice iPhone app to go with it. So with this separation of roles, companies can then specialize in one or individual segments, which lowers the barriers to new companies coming in and building cool devices and apps and services people use. So how do we get there? It's pretty far-fetched. It's not the way the market works right now, but it's the way it needs to go. And hopefully you guys here can help with that in any way possible. Like, if you're using the services, ask for ways to export your data and just make sure that you're using services that let you at least get the data out. That's the first step. With the Indie Webcamp work that we've been working on, using your own domain name to sign into services. This is something that OpenID has been doing for a long time, and it's kind of been replaced by Facebook and Twitter logins. But let's get back to the idea of people own their own identity to sign into services. If you want to take a look at some of the stuff I've been doing, my website, Parecki.com, has a lot of data I'm publishing publicly, and some of it privately as well. Parecki.com/metrics has a lot of the sleep data that I've been tracking and weight. And if you're interested in more of the web side of things as well, indiewebcamp.com/building blocks has some good resources of pieces that you can pull together to actually do some of this right now. So that's the end of my talk. You can reach me either on my website or AaronPK on Twitter, and I would love to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Aaron. I think we have a question back here.
So congrats, I saw the weight graph coming down. What other benefits have you seen over 6 years?
What benefits have I seen of tracking this much stuff? So I also publish travel plans, like my future travel that's coming up. And a couple times that's actually come in handy because someone's been like, oh yeah, I'm going on that trip with you. And rather than having to ask me what seat I'm on, they can just go look at my website, and see what seat on the plane I am and get a seat next to me. So that's pretty cool. I tend to do a lot of this where I'm trying to connect with other people. So the whole goal is like people are the most important thing. Like none of this matters if there's not other people. So what can I publish and what can I share that helps me connect with people in more ways? So that's where a lot of the benefit comes.
Hi, Aaron. Thanks. That's a really great talk. Did you ever hear about the Locker Project and Jeremy Miller's? Because it's another take on this, isn't it? And
yeah, Jeremy Miller was working on the Locker Project, now working on Telehash, which is more of a low-level protocol that can work on this stuff. That's one of those things. There's been several projects like that have come up, and that's sort of the aggregation service model, where because the situation right now is that companies get VC funded, they try to scale to 1 billion users. They usually don't unless they're Facebook or Twitter, and then they get bought by Facebook or Twitter. And so in the meantime, we have to have these aggregation services that can at least pull your data back down and give it to you in a box. So it's wonderful that people are solving it from that angle as well. But
this is where all that can go and have a home.
right, and eventually, hopefully, that kind of that service will be more of a core part of the ecosystem rather than a sort of tacked on like, oh, and you need this because there's all these problems. It should be more fundamental to the way this stuff works.
If there are no final questions, then we will move on. Thank you very much, Aaron.
Thank you.